This feels like an edgy video for me to share. On New Year's Eve, I sat in my first psilocybin mushroom experience, my first psychedelic experience ever. Psilocybin is the chemical that is in magic mushrooms, in case you don't know that. And before I explain to you the experience, I need to clear things up because I am sober and I still consider myself sober. I had to come a long way to get to the point of ingesting something from outside of myself into my body. I have been sober for 8 years. It took 8 years of preparing and letting go of the conditioning that I've been fed, the cultural conditioning that labels all drugs as bad. Heroin and psilocybin are in the same Schedule 1 illegal substance. However, psilocybin is being studied to treat and cure addiction. Those two sentences shouldn't go together. So to get to this point, I had to drop all of those war on drugs conditioning that we took from what happened to psychedelics in the 60s. The fear of someone jumping out of the window, like that's real, that stays in us. And so I had to let that go. Because on one hand, I have this sober identity, and then on this other hand, I am a seeker. And so what I did is I read and I listened to people's stories. When they would talk about psychedelic experiences, I was super curious because I had some pretty weird spiritual experiences that began my journey. And some of the things that people would talk about when they feel like interconnected with nature, those things felt similar to things I experienced. There was one time, one of the craziest things I experienced without mushrooms is that I was lying in my bed during this time in my life where a lot of openings were happening. And at night, I noticed as I closed my eyes, I could start to see these fractal patterns everywhere, almost like a kaleidoscope. That was my only reference for it at the time. Then out of that, there was this sun, this bright yellow sun, and out of the sun came Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, that four-limbed structure that you might have seen before if you look it up. And then it dissolved, and then out of it came this elephant-looking figure. And at the time, I didn't know who Ganesha was. But afterwards, I looked it up and I was like, oh my gosh, it was Ganesha. Now, for those of you that don't know, Ganesha is the god of wisdom and the god of removing obstacles out of your way. And this is during a time where I had a lot of obstacles that I needed to remove. So experiences like this kept me curious. There was no substances, just me on a spiritual journey. And by the way, I wasn't imagining these figures. They were as real as if I were talking onto this mic. They were just in my vision. And so it was experiences like this that kept me curious. I'm also a big time fan and listener of the Tim Ferriss Show. And if you listen to Tim's podcast, you'll know that he talks a lot about how psilocybin and psychedelics have helped him with depression. And he's donating a lot of his money to psychedelic research. In 2018, I read Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind. And while I was reading it, I found, again, a lot of similarities with some experiences that I felt. And overall, you could see and feel and hear the sacredness and the healing and the value of these substances. But I wasn't ready. My spiritual awakening left me at times mentally unstable. I'm sure if I had been seen a psychiatrist, they might have labeled that I had psychosis. And now I had a lot of support around me at that time. I thank God that I did, and that didn't happen. And so because of my mental health, I stayed wary of doing psychedelics. I didn't want to lose control. I didn't want to go back to those states. Although it was a beautiful, wild, and expansive and crazy time in my life, it's not necessarily something I'd want to go back to. It wasn't very stable. It wasn't very grounded. And plus, I was sober. So there was this ego of I'm more pure. I'm pure because I'm on a spiritual path and I'm not doing these plant medicines and psychedelics. So what I did is I stood by. I stood by and I watched as people close to me delved into it. I have two friends that are deeply in a shamanic path. My partner has sat with ayahuasca. And so I hear the stories of their experiences. And across the bat, from what I see, from what I hear firsthand, it's nothing but positive experiences. Sure, they have challenging experiences, but it always comes back to being meaningful. Now, you can go on YouTube right now and search bad psychedelic trip, and you're going to find some accounts of people, and they typically use that as a title because it elicits fear, and you're going to click on it. So you're going to hear from people, and that's often the only times when I heard of negative things happening. But firsthand, overall, I was hearing nothing but positive things. Still, I was afraid. I was afraid of doing it, and I was afraid of talking about doing it, because for you, you might be new to me, you might be just watching this video, but for other people where I've shared a lot of my content before, they know me as someone who's sober. So it feels like this big risk to say, hey, I did psychedelics, don't hate me, right? You're going to judge me like I judged other people who would do psychedelics. I even resist using the term plant medicine, and I don't know why I'm doing quotes. It is a valid term, but I resist using it because when my friends would talk about it and they'd be doing this plant medicine every week, not every week, but every like month or so, and I'd be like, oh, they're just using that as an excuse. Like they're just addicted to this thing and they're using it to bypass. And that's not to say that you can't use it in an unhealthy way. I definitely don't want to say that you can do this every day, but these were my judgments that I was having. And then I've been doing breathwork since 2018, but it was in 2021, I hurt my knee and I had to get knee surgery. And so I really got back into breathwork. And as I was doing circular connected breathing, I was having all of these powerful angelic visions and experiences and just powerful experiences through breathing. And it felt very psychedelic from what people who knew breathing and psychedelics would tell me, and it felt like that. And so I was like, this is interesting. So I kept doing my breathwork practice. I kept reading Doors of Perception by Aldous Huxley, watching YouTube documentaries on people's ayahuasca experiences, and just continuing to learn, listening to Ram Dass talk about his early days, which is heavily psilocybin and LSD involved. And then I read a friend, Charles Freeley's account in his book, The Will to Do Nothing. You can find my interview with Charles on my channel. He talks about his time being this incredibly harrowing experience. And at the time of reading that, before when I would read people's accounts of psychedelics, I would get triggered by them. But at that time, I didn't get triggered at all. I was actually felt joy because I didn't expect Charles to be someone who would do psychedelics. It kind of like surprised me in a really nice way and kind of got me more curious, even though if you read his account, it might not compel you to get into it, but it kind of gave me a nudge of, maybe there's something here. The final straw came in December of 2022, where I attended my first holotropic breathwork workshop. For those that don't know what that is, it was developed by Stanislav Grof, who was doing LSD-assisted therapy before LSD became illegal. So what he did is he wanted to find another way to elicit an altered state of consciousness, and he developed holotropic breathwork. Holotropic breathwork is 3 hours of deep, full, connected breathing. It sounds a little crazy, but it's super, super powerful, and you have someone that's sitting with you, so it's a really tight held container, which allows for some things to really come up. And so as I journeyed in my breathing sessions, I experienced all of these releases. I almost vomited one time. It was very somatic one day, and the other day was kind of more psychedelic, more transpersonal, more angelic. And I got the messages that I was ready. And beyond just that, just being at the workshop, I would connect with people over dinner, and they were all like studying psychedelic assisted therapy. And as I talked with these people, I felt a real connection to them, and I started to feel a connection to the substances. And they would tell me how similar breathwork was, that breathwork can get you to the same spaces as these psychedelics from people who have this experience. And so there was one day where I was sitting for my partner, and I'm standing listening to some of the music, and I'm kind of like dancing. You're allowed to move and dance if you'd like, not go crazy, but I'm dancing, watching him breathe. And then the person behind me is crying. The person over there is laughing. A person down the way is punching a pillow and he's screaming. And I'm just like, wow, this is such a cool place to be. I love being around this. To an outsider, you might walk in that room and be like, what is going on? But I loved being in that room. I love being around this work. And so with people telling me they were similar, I was like, okay. And then in that breathwork session, I got the message that I'm ready. I'm ready for it. And for me, I always felt a relationship to mushrooms. When I was a little kid, I would drive on my uncle's dirt bike. He lived in Italy, and I would visit him in Italy and drive on my uncle's dirt bike, and we'd go forage for fiend-friendly mushrooms at like 5 a.m. And I just have these great memories of a 10-year-old getting to be on a motorcycle that are just so cool. And plus, I love mushrooms. So out of any psychedelic, naturally, psilocybin mushrooms was the one that I wanted to explore first. So I set it up. I asked my partner if she wanted to do it with me on New Year's. She was down, and so it was. Now, back to my sober friends who are listening to this. When I gave up alcohol, it was one of the most healing, transformative experiences of my life. My inner healer the whole time has known when the next healing modality is right for me. And it took 8 years for any sort of psychedelic to be in the picture for me. And your inner healer knows the same. Whether you're sober or not, your inner healer knows your timing. It knows what's right for you. There is no rush. It's important, from what I understand and what I didn't do it for a while, is that you feel a pull towards it in some way. And you don't participate in spiritual tourism, where you're doing it to feed your ego of, this is another spiritual thing that I can put on my belt, or, well, all of my spiritual friends are doing it, so I guess I'm going to do it too. For someone who typically acts in that way, it was really hard for me to not do that, to listen and trust my own truth. So please trust your own guide. Everyone will say you do not need psychedelics on the spiritual path. David Hawkins, one of my favorite teachers, would say that straight and narrow is the path, that there are many modalities and everyone has its timing. So trust your own timing. Ram Dass credits psilocybin for beginning his spiritual journey. But once he got to India and he talked to his guru about it, his guru took like 7 hits of acid. It's a wild story if you look it up. And it didn't affect him. And what he said was to Ram Dass that you can visit Christ, but you can't stay. And Ram Dass was interested in staying. And so he stopped using chemicals and he really developed his own spiritual practice so he can hold the states in himself. So I encourage you to find your own path with this and your own journey of when this might be right for you, especially if you're watching this because you saw and you're interested and you're new to it. Really, please make sure you feel the call. Make sure you're trusting on the inside and you're not doing it for an external reason. Now, maybe you're listening to this and you've listened to some of my stuff before and you're like, oh my gosh, Lou does psychedelics. Now I don't want to listen to him. I used to judge people who I listened to and I knew that they were sober. Then I hear that they did something that doesn't fit my belief of what sober is. And I would say, I lost this person. So if that's you, I hope you do stick around. I hope you just open up to the potential, the healing potential. There's some documentaries on Netflix to check out. Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind, is on there. So there's a lot of research that you can do on your own before you just say, no, this is not valid. It is valid for many, many people. And you're probably wondering, Lou, what the heck happened on the experience? I'm wanting to watch my first psychedelic experience. That's what I came here for. I'm going to have another video that's going to talk more about the experience. This, I just wanted to be a video that explains how I got here And how might you think about making this decision? Because I do not think that it's a decision that you do just by a whim. I do think that there's a preparation. I think that there's a sense of your own practice and readiness and having the space, the set and setting, the container ready, and that you're able to also integrate it afterwards. I will share more about that experience on the next video. So make sure that you are subscribed, hit that bell so you get notified of that next video. And I look forward to seeing you as we continue this journey together. Again, my name is Lou Redman. I'm a life coach, meditation teacher, and I help people step confidently in the direction of their dreams. All of these things we talk about, they're all our tools to help us go inwards so that we can bring our gifts outwards. Thanks for watching. See you later.